Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Hilchot Birkot HaShachar, Siman Memvav, and we are up to a very important Seif, Seif Tet, that actually is very much relevant to what we're going through right now, the process of Slihot, the period of saying a whole tefillah prior to Shacharit, and that is the concept of saying Birkat Torah prior to saying any psukim. Lo yikra psukim kodem Birkat Torah, says Maran Shulchan Aruch, afal pishu omram derech tachanunim. Even though that Birkat Torah is for learning Torah primarily, and learning Torah means that you are actually sitting to learn. When you say a pasuk and you're not intending to learn Torah, you're intending to say tachanunim, you're using the pasuk as means of tefillah, as means of asking from HaKadosh Baruch Hu for his compassion. That I would have thought does not require Birkat Torah, because I'm not learning Torah. What I'm doing is primarily invoking Hashem's compassion and mercy through the tools of the psukim in Tanakh. And yet Maran writes, Afal pi shehu omram derech tachanunim, you should not do it. V'yesh omrim she'en lachosh. There are those who are lenient. Again, Bet Yosef brings this in the name of Agor, and the second shita says because because you're saying it for tefillah, not for learning Torah, it's mutar. What's the psak? Maran writes, "V'nachon lachosh l'sfara rishona." It's fit, it's proper to be choshesh, to be mahmir for the first shita, and not say any psukim, even derech tachanunim and tefillah, before saying the Birkat Torah. Now, there are many achronim that they hold this language of Maran indicates that a person could, technically speaking, do it. Technically speaking, could do it. It's just proper, nachon, that you should not do it. But technically speaking, you should be able to do it. If push comes to shove, meikar adin, you should be able to do it. So says the Rama, and here is where the split happens between the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. Aval haminhag kismara achrona. The minhag is to be lenient, says the Rama, and say psukim before Birkat Torah if you are doing it derech tefillah. And the example that he gives is Sha'arei bimei slichot, because in the period of slichot, mitfalelim slichot v'achar kach mevarchim. We first say slichot, says the Rama, and then we say Birkat HaShachar after slichot. And Birkat HaShachar includes Birkat Torah, so we don't say Birkat Torah up until Shacharit, which is after slichot. Every day also when you enter the Bet Knesset, you say a whole lot of psukim. Prior to Birkat Torah, we say some psukim. So says the Rama, you see that this is the minhag. And then he says, the minhag has evolved that you say Birkat Torah immediately after Asher Yatzar. So that kind of like takes care of a lot of the issue, because he's saying it after Asher Yatzar. But technically speaking, says the Rama, the minhag is to be mekel, to be lenient, and say Birkat Torah after Slichot. Now, we also just mentioned now that according to Maran Shulchan Aruch, it seems to be that meikar adin is mutar. It says lachon lachosh, proper to be machmir. Doesn't say it's asur, right? The problem starts from a tshuva of Rambam in Perador. Rambam's tshuvot of Perador was not available for many of the Rishonim, many of the generations of Achronim until the very recent time. So Maran Shulchan Aruch certainly did not see the tshuvot of the Rambam Perador, which we're going to discuss. He actually has a tshuva on this. But before we discuss that tshuva, the Mishna Berurah writes, Slichot ufi mash katav l'kameh Tayom na'agu levarech birkat haTorah miyad achar birkat hashatzar. Says the Chafetz Chaim, once nowadays the people say birkat haTorah after hashatzar, a lot of this issue already is solved. In ken sevir land en lomar psukim afilu derech tachanunim kodem birkat haTorah. You see that we have been concerned and mindful of not saying any psukim before birkat haTorah, and therefore says the Chafetz Chaim, im ken yesh linhog gam ken bimei haslichot lomar birkat haTorah kodem slichot uldalegah achar כך. Therefore says the Chafetz Chaim, the proper thing based on our current minhag is, even for Ashkenazim, to say birkat haTorah prior to slichot, because you see that we have made this minhag of saying it after hashatzar in order to take care of this very issue. The Chafetz Chaim writes that a person should say the rest of the birkat hashachar also before slichot, not just birkat haTorah. Following the seder of olamot and what they stand for, what they accomplish, slichot is like a tefillah by itself. That's why the structure of slichot is in such a way that it starts from tachanunim, from ashrei, then you have kaddish, then you have the actual tefillah, which is the vayavors and so on, and then you have a kaddish titkabala at the end as well. So says the Chafetz Chaim, it's always fit to try to say the entirety of birkat hashachar prior to the slichot, because these brachot of birkat hashachar, they save a person, and we mentioned this before as well, from achiza of klipot and chitzonim. So the earlier you say them, the earlier you basically are shielded from those kochot hara, from those spiritual negativities. You know, basically zari is very skar. And the earlier you do it, the better it is, says the Rabbi. Now, we haven't talked about the Rambam yet. The Rama, okay? Because Minhag Israel Torah, he says, you see from here that we have never been concerned. What's the pshat? It's asur to learn Torah before saying birkat Torah. According to Ramban, is the oraita. So says the Rama, you see from here, from our minhag, that what requires birkat Torah is learning Torah, not saying tachanunim. That's what he's saying. Now, says the Mishna Berurah later, and this is, you know, the next 5 minutes is going to become very, very interesting and important. Says the Mishna Berurah, v'achar kach mevarachin, shkol zehu meikar adin. All of this is meikar adin, וכמו שהביא זה בבית יוסף בשם העריל, שכן המנהג באשכנז. הוא מסיים על כך הרמה ונהגו לסדר, רצונו לומר שכיום נהגו העולם להחמיר כדברי הטור שלו, לומר שום פסוקים קודם ברכת התורה. So it says, למעשה at the end of the day, מעיקר הדין, you could be מקל. The Rama is מעיקר הדין. But the minhag is, like the tour, to be מחמיר, not to say any psukim before ברכת התורה. So it says, it comes out, by the way, it comes out that both according to Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, Maran and Rama, Meikar Adin, there is room to be Mekel, but halachically speaking, practically speaking, it would be not mutar because the minhag has evolved to be machmir. And Maran, of course, says, Nachon lach. Haravadia also writes that you should be machmir, not to say psukim, before you say Birkat Torah, but he says he understands Maran Shulchan Aruch and his assertion to be Meikar Adin Lahakel. But the problem is like this. Haravadia also brings this Rambam. I don't see it here in the notes, but the Rambam in his Shuvot of Perador, as we mentioned, I think it's in Siman Kufim Aleph, I don't remember exactly. He writes that a person cannot, is asur, to say any psukim, even one pasuk, even derech tachanunim, before you say Birkat Torah. That's what the Rambam says. So it says Haravadia, had Maran Shulchan Aruch seen the Rambam, Maran holds Rambam is the Amud HaHora'ah. He is the Gdola Poskim, Maran writes. And prior to Maran, the halacha was like Rambam, all over the place. Maran himself writes that the Psakim of Rambam were accepted from Saudi until everywhere that he had Jews in the Middle East and elsewhere, the Psakim of Rambam was accepted. Of course, we know nowadays the Temanim very much, they keep Rambam, even those things that everyone has argued with Rambam, halacha is not like Rambam. But the Temanim follow the Rambam. Recently, actually, they had a whole machloket. Somebody had mentioned something disparaging about their minhag of having meat until Sudam Afseket and the Tishat Yamim and the 9 days, and it became a war in Eretz Yisrael. They said, "What do you mean? We've always been following Rambam. Rambam passes that the din of the Gemara that you could do it until Sudam Afseket, the 9 days, you could have meat, but they've been following Rambam." And that was actually the minhag across the board in many Sephardi countries until Maran came along. So Maran always the default of the psak is like Rambam. So says Chacham Ovadia, had Maran seen the Tshuvot Aperador of the Rambam, he would have never paskined Nachon Lachmir. He would say Asur. Not that it's fit, it's proper, Lachatchila, it should be Machmir, but it's Asur to be Mekel. And that's what he seems to paskin as well. Again, the Or Tzion says a very similar thing as well, that you should not say any psukim before you utter the Birkat Torah, and that's really the halach. Now, well, you're not saying Divrei Torah. The problem there is that you are respecting someone before respecting Hashem. That's why you cannot be mashkim lepitcho. That by itself is a very debatable subject of what exactly the boundary of the Isur is. Is it the Isur that you're waking up to his door, you're going out of your way to greet someone and to respect them before you daven shacharit, or even if you bump into the shul, it should be Asur. Mikaradin, there's room certainly to be mekel, and to if you bump into somebody, you want to be respectful, you say good morning, you say same thing again. Good morning, first of all, is not necessarily a problem. Being shoel bishlomo is a greater issue. And secondly, that's correct. Secondly, is the main problem is when you say the Shelat Shalom, which is with the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that's like a proper Shelat Shalom, not necessarily a high, especially when you get up and you on the way you see somebody, you greet them a good morning. That's not necessarily included in these. But again, that's a whole different topic. Now, in Shelot Utshuvot Yosef Ometz, he writes that a person that puts on tefillin before you have said Birkat Torah, right? And you want to say the psukim, right? So can you say those things before you say Birkat Torah? We just mentioned that it's a problem if you say it. So he says a person should not say those psukim until after you say Birkat Torah, because of this very thing that we just mentioned. And Kaf HaChaim also brings that those who say V'hi Noam, say Hashem Yichud, before every mitzvah that they do is say V'hi Noam, the pasuk of V'hi Noam, they should be careful not to do it before saying Birkat Torah. Therefore, a person that enters the shul, right, and people who enter the shul based on Zohar that we mentioned, they put their hand on the mezuzah and they say a whole bunch of psukim, and so on. They should not be saying that before saying Birkat HaTorah. All of those are included in it as well. Now, you have sometimes bakashot that are not psukim, they're bakashot, but they have references to psukim. They have like a half a pasuk or a reference to a pasuk. That the Kaf HaChaim says is mutar to say. As long as you're not saying psukim, actual psukim, the bakashot itself is mutar. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Says the Mishna Berurah. If someone says what? You just tell them Hashem should help you to come to Amud Yomi every day. Amen. You could say Hashem should help you to come to Mishna Berurah after Shacharit as well. That's the biggest bracha. So says the Mishna Berurah on this. B'shacharit va'afilu ha'mashkimim b'boker hashkem. This is Seif Katan Lamed in Mishna Berurah. Ve'omrim kriyat shema kodem amud hashachar. Even those who wake up very early in the morning and they say kriyat shema before amud hashachar, the sham bevadai eno yotze bazeh yedei kriyat shema. That you're not yotze kriyat shema before amud hashachar. That's for sure. Af al pi ken nohagim lesayem acharav baruch Shem. Even if they say it so early, they still say Baruch Shem afterwards. Anyways, to just have said it together, coupled up with Shema at the same time. אבל מה שאומרים קודם משתבח, ובתורתך כתוב לאמור שמע ישראל, אין לומר אחריו ברוך שם, כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. כי לפעמים, this is the second part of the Ramah that talks about saying after Shema Baruch Shem in the mornings, because sometimes you wait until Kriyat Shema is going to be after Siman of at least Magan Abraham. So therefore, this way, when you see the say the Kriyat Shema of Korbanot and you've said Baruch Shem afterwards, you covered your bases. Sometimes the Sibur is waiting, and you're not going to be ending up saying Shema, especially Shabbats in deep in the in the summer when the times are very early. So then you have to say Shema earlier sometimes that the minyan starts because the tzibur waits and then you miss the time of Shema. And always you accustom yourself to say Baruch Shem. The below Baruch Shem kivod malchuto lo nir'eh kriyat Shema rak spur devarim. If you don't say Baruch Shem, it looks like you're just saying the pasuk. It doesn't look like you're saying mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, and therefore you should say Baruch Shem as well. Says the Mishna Berurah. Ach yechavel shelo latzet im ken ela im ken yareh shasibur yavru zman kriyat Shema. You should not have kavanah to be yotzeh with that unless you are concerned that you're going to be not making it to the actual time of Shema. But when the time does not pass, best is to do it with Tzibur and do it when the brachot of Kriyat Shema are being said. So that's something important to keep in mind as well. There's still some parts of this that we're going to cover B'ezrat Hashem in the days to come.